realize this. And welcome to another fun Startup TNT seminar thing that we're doing. It's going to be a blast. So you guys just came from the G2V Optics one. I got to be able to look at that for the first 15 minutes. They do such crazy stuff. We're going to have another chat with people who also do crazy things. But first, I want to introduce you to one of our great friends, Tara Benson from BDC, one of our sponsors. We couldn't have Brian here with us without BDC and Tara. So Tara, introduce yourself. What are you up to?
Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm super excited to be here, and best of luck to all the companies who are competing today. Super excited to see you all. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Tara Benson, and I'm a senior account manager at BDC. And I focus solely on helping innovative tech entrepreneurs grow and scale their businesses. BDC is super happy to be a sponsor of an event like this that showcases some amazing innovation coming out of Alberta. And so today I'm honored to introduce you to our next guest, Brian Heath, the CEO and founder of Drivewyze, who will be joined by Lazina McKenzie for a fireside chat. And as you all know, Drivewyze is a tech powerhouse that was built here in Alberta. They just recently raised $6 million, and I'm looking forward to learning more about how it all began for the founder. That'll pass it back to you, Tim.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So without further ado, Lazina from VMS, loving it. Thanks for coming on. And Brian from Drivewyze, I'm looking forward to hearing exactly what it is that you guys are all up to and looking forward to this chat.
Tim, that's very nice of you. Hello, everybody. My name is Lazina McKenzie. For those that don't know me, I lead the Threshold Impact Venture Mentoring Service, which we shorten to VMS, which is a mentorship program for entrepreneurs, and it is run through the University of Alberta. I am very excited. Thank you for Startup TNT for asking me to be part of this. I'm pretty excited and very honored to chat with you today, Brian. This is a very big deal for all of us who are here to hear from you and hear a little bit about your journey. So enough from me. Let's talk to you. That's what this is all about. And let's start with some easy questions. Like, where did you grow up?
Oh, okay. I didn't expect that. Sure. Born, so one, thanks for the invite. Happy to be here. Looking forward to just sharing some of the experience that we've had at Drivewyze with everyone. I was born in Lima, Peru, and immigrated to Canada, did most of my growing up in Edmonton. So grade school, high school, university, and then years later, moved out to Vancouver.
Great. Okay, didn't know that early beginning. Thanks for sharing that. I did some Googling to find out a little bit about you. So I know you started a few companies. I want to start with, I know there was an oil and gas services company prior to 2003. Can you just tell us just a little snippet about that? And that to me is the beginning of, or maybe for you, I want to hear from you, entrepreneurial seeds for you. So can you just tell us a little bit about that first business?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I was involved in a green technology, oil and gas services and manufacturing. It was a startup. We went through, had to deal for the first time with outside investors. We raised funds to acquire another company, an established company in our marketplace.
Okay.
Interesting note that kind of links that life, that experience with Drivewyze is that we actually owned a fleet of large trucks. that traveled, to oil field sites across Western Alberta. So I learned about trucking and all the issues related to it.
In that time, in that first business.
Yeah. And we operated out of Nisku. We exited that in 2001, though I stayed working with them for a few years to a public company. So that's actually what gave us, the capital to go ahead and start, the business that would eventually become Drivewise.
And so let's talk about that other business, Intelligent Imaging Systems is what it's called. And you started that shortly after exiting, like a couple of years or so.
I retired for 6 months. I didn't
okay.
I had taken an executive MBA course at Queen's program, and Fred Coe, who's my business partner, we started Intelligent Imaging System, or the parent company of Drivewyze now, in 2003. And that was, it was a very different experience. It's interesting, when you talk about a startup experience, Drivewyze is kind of really a tale of two startups. There was the parent company startup, which is a very different circumstance than Drivewyze. And the parent company, IIS, it was self-funded. This was, we had a technology that used integrated military class thermal imagers into mobile inspection vans that we sold to law enforcement agencies across North America for commercial vehicle enforcement. So noble cause: identify trucks that were unsafe, take them off the road before they get into a crash, before they cause a fatality. And, but we self-funded it, which was a different experience. We did not go for outside capital. It meant that, we had to be self-reliant, and we were in this niche industry. There was no network in Edmonton for commercial vehicle enforcement technologies. And so we had to create one. Most of our business, 99% of our revenue, was in the United States. And so we created a network there. And so it was interesting because as we evolved over time, away from being a hardware integrator to a systems integrator, having our own software, we felt relatively isolated in the Edmonton market. We kind of operated in our own industry, in our own market, and had very little interaction with sort of the Edmonton ecosystem. Very different experience than Drivewyze.
And then for those that don't know the journey, so this is the parent company, IIS, and then how long later did you decide that Drivewyze was its own thing, and you lead both of these companies? So tell us about that thought process and why that ended up being separate from your point of view?
Sure. One of the advantages of being bootstrapped is that you have this hyper attention to profitability. And so IIS was profitable 10 years in a row. We took every penny, we reinvested it into developing our technologies. And in 2011, we invented something called the commercial mobile radio service transponder. That's the core technology. That's the technology at the core of Drivewyze. Okay. And we thought, wow, we could use this technology to disrupt this billion-dollar industry that's out there in annual recurring revenues for waste station bypass services. So we started plowing all of the profits from Intelligent Imaging Systems into Drivewyze. And it did not take long to outstrip that completely, because Drivewyze required a large amount of capital, a relatively large amount of capital to set up. And so we had to look at Drivewyze as its own entity. We had to think about how we could finance Drivewyze externally. And it was just a very different experience. In 2012, we went to the Banff Venture Forum and we presented, to raise funds. It was a completely new experience for us. I'd worked previously with investors, but not institutional investors. And so it was a different class of investors.
Right.
There certainly wasn't a community like there is today in Edmonton for startups. We kind of felt like we were out in the wild on our own, being exposed to very new circumstances.
Okay, so I want to ask about this. So before we get into like, tell us that initial time with like investors. Okay, you're saying we. What did the team look like in those earlier days? How many of you were there? How quickly did you scale, like the number of people that you had on your team?
Sure. We were probably sitting at around 30 people in intelligent imaging systems at NIIS at the time.
Yeah.
And then it didn't take us long to grow to about 45, 50 people. And that's I think when, in fact, we used, we had this profitable company. After year 3, we even started paying ourselves. So we had felt pretty good about ourselves. And, but then, we started investing in Drivewyze. Well, we took out all our personal savings. We ended up taking mortgages out on our properties and putting them against the line of credit for the company. We ended up, going out and getting some mezzanine debt. And so the opportunity was incredibly large. We had to invest more to get it. And there was a lot of risk in that proposition, which is why we said we need to go and get real outside financing. We need to de-risk what we're doing.
Yeah, so let's go there. Thanks for setting that up, just like, how that looked. So let's go there. So this is now the first time you're doing this in this way, like looking for capital in this way. So walk us through, like, you're an individual person doing this for the first time. Like, what does that look like for you? How did you move forward? It's a different time than it was now. Tell us about that in the early days in that first round for you.
Yeah, you'd think running multiple companies, buying and selling companies, getting an MBA would like prepare you, for that process. And I don't think I've ever, really put together a business plan in the way that they sort of prepped us in business school.
Right.
Going out for financing. So it was a new experience. We brought on a CFO who, had experience. And I think that's one of the big things. So, you think about traits that serve you through, each of these cycles. So humility is a big one for us. Knowing what you don't know and reaching out and working with people who can teach you. And so we had to learn quickly in terms of how to, prepare, an investor deck, how to present, in front of an investor forum, the whole 30-second elevator pitch. That was all new. We had spent so much time focusing on our customers, right? Solving real problems, that this felt like a new dimension. And so you had to go into learning mode. But it was a good experience. And because we had a good product and a good, a performing, successful company, it made going through that process a lot easier because we had a foundation to do it. And
would you classify that as like you had confidence in what you'd built, like there was market traction, like those things, like that confidence piece was there from your point of view?
Yeah, and we had really proven ourselves as a management team to be able to operate a business, to be able to overcome adversity, to be able to manage your company financially. Those are all important things. So yes, there were new skills to build up in terms of raising external capital, but we had this fantastic foundation to draw from.
Awesome. And then, okay, so that first round was successful.
Yeah.
How did that, so what did that lead to? What was the next piece for you? What did that lead to for the company?
Yeah, we, first of all, we timed it so that we had options. I'm always a firm believer in competition. So if you're looking for financing, you want to have competition with the folks that are looking to partner with you. And so we had a very competitive process, which helped us. It allowed us to sit back and not just look at the financial terms, but to look at the qualitative aspects of the management teams from the venture capitalist firms that we were dealing with, and to choose and to be frank, selfish about what were the qualifications that we needed, right? So in our own, circumstance, we needed to grow our management team, We needed managers that had experience in the SaaS world. Transportation vertical would have been fantastic. Best of class SaaS business practices and scaling practices. So we chose, the VCs that were the best fit for us. And so in Canada, that was a company, a VC called Innovia. And in the US, in the Bay Area, it was a VC called Emergence Capital.
And so, and what year was that? That first?
2013.
Right. Okay.
And that really changed the way that we ran our company. It was really interesting. We had these ambitious goals. So that didn't change. The VCs had joined us because they believed in our vision. But what really changed was we were used to being self-reliant. And suddenly we had this partnership and this access to networks and expertise, exposure to some of the fastest growing technology companies in North America. And, the same year, the fund that invested in me, for instance, also invested in Eric Yuan at Zoom. So we were, a fund partner. So I got to see all these world-class companies with the CEOs that would get together and network and get exposed to these best of breed sort of practices. It was really inspiring. If you take that sort of a lifelong learning approach to to your business, and you think, what are the best practices that we can adopt? It's amazing that your exposure to some of these networks, it really opens your eyes as to what's possible.
And so, I mean, let's just segue for just like a minute or two into like, what is that like? You're an individual person. You now have this exposure with global reach, North America, but there's some global reach. What is that like for you as like you're an individual person who's growing this? What does that feel like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you could probably become overwhelmed with it, but I think we were far too focused on just trying to grow the company and be successful. So we had our eye on the ball as to what we needed to do.
Right.
And we were looking for tools to help us do it. And so I think that, that sort of kept us centered that whole time.
Yeah.
I will say that, when you go to a meeting and you think, wow, I've got this market I'm after, it's worth 500 million a year. And then the CEO beside you says, I'm working on this $3 billion market opportunity. And this other CEO goes up and they said, we've now accessed and tapped into a $25 billion market. You think, I think I have to start thinking bigger. Like you start really reassessing the markets that you're going after, and not just bigger for the sake of being bigger. But the question is, as you start sort of building out and investing in your company, what is your sort of background intention? For us, it was to build a broader platform. And I don't think we would have caught on to the concept of a platform without being exposed to, a lot of our contemporaries.
Wow. Okay, so I want to understand. So let's fast forward. I know you've just raised like a significant amount of money for the business, and that initial piece of like we've stayed grounded in what we were doing. So head down, doing the work. So what has that been like in these 7 years of growing, raising money, continuing to move forward, and staying grounded in where you're at with what you want to achieve?
Yeah, I think I remember once we were trying to raise some money in 2005, and we thought, wow, if we could only raise $100,000. It was the big ambitious goal.
Yeah.
And so now, we've raised 130 million Canadian for the companies. And so it's a very different trajectory. The types of experience that you would have and the advice that you could give to raising money as a startup is very different to raising money as a company that's scaling. And it's not as applicable. I would say that you have to evolve with your company and to understand that the needs at those different stages. So what got you to the stage you're at is not what is going to get you to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have the team around you and yourself be motivated to evolving and scaling with the company It's just a very different experience. But as long as there's this commitment to, none of the processes you go through are for the sake of the process in and of itself. They are all a means to an end. And so in a perfect world, you wouldn't have to go and raise any capital. You have it all yourselves. But you're raising that capital because you have got this goal in mind, and you're understanding that you're going to need that capital to reach that goal. And so at different stages in that process, you have to ask yourself, do we want to access outside capital? What's the right capital mix for us? Should we be accessing outside capital? There's all these kind of decisions as you're going through it. I would say that the way you run your company from day one has to be really disciplined, because even though, so we treated, for instance, we had no outside investors when we first started, but we did have conventional bank financing. We treated that as our outside investor. So we tried to make sure that our financial management, our financial reporting, our legal structure, all of that was sort of set up properly. And so that, as you continue through the process, you're almost prepping yourself for the next stage.
And so you've raised this capital. You talked about the focus and the goals. What does that mean for the next, what does this mean for the next, several years, few years for the company and for you and your team?
Yeah, so, we've got this incredible opportunity. We, in order to sell our service, so for us, our first commercial service in Drivewyze was a waste station bypass service. In order to sell that service, we had to come up with a go-to-market strategy that would enable customers to consume our service. We're a software-only service, and so we came up with a channel management strategy to embed our software in millions of devices across trucking companies, and this is with a variety of telematics partners. In doing that, we thought, if we're building, instead of just building an application, we should think about building a platform. Because if you can reach across millions of vehicles in the transportation network, and you have a flexible platform, then you can really unlock a lot of solutions to pain points in the transportation industry. So commercial freight transportation, for instance, has $85 billion a year of waste. It's a almost $800 billion market. So what you'll see Drivewyze doing over the next several years is being associated as a connected truck platform, and you'll see multiple services that flow through our platform, each of them unlocking exciting market opportunities and solving big problems in the transportation network. And so less and less about waste station bypass, though that is and will probably continue to be one of our main revenue drivers for years.
I'm mindful of time, but I have like 5 million more questions for you, obviously. I want to turn a little, thank you for that. I want to turn a little bit, because I think this is important. I want to hear this, so I bet everybody else does. You've been a leader for a very long time, and managing teams and raising capital and being a face and all of these things. Can you talk to us about lessons learned from a leadership perspective? One or two key things you've learned maybe the very hard way, and it's stuck with you and you've implemented and moved forward.
That's interesting. I think that fundamentally, I approach leadership as from a service perspective. And so how do I help those around me? And I think that's very different from, as a young professional without that experience, you hear tales of leadership and you think the boss just tells everybody what to do. I think, as I reflect on sort of a very collaborative leadership style, that leadership is more about empowering those around you. And so there's a responsibility to every leader with every new team member that you bring on, that you're supporting them for success. And it's just a very different style of leadership, but it is one that, you know, it engenders a very potent management team. You know, so it's, yeah, I hope that characterizes it for you.
Yeah, no, I think so. I have one final question, because I really want to go down the leadership, like deeper into that, but I'm mindful of time. You know, I run a mentorship program. I want to talk about and ask you about support and mentorship that you've received along the way, and that can come from like many different places. What has that been for you? Have you had that in place? Have you not? How's that benefited you in your own thinking as you know, had to make many decisions over many years? Can you talk a little bit about like the support and mentorship and where that's come from for you?
Yeah, you know, I think that as I started, mentors were folks that were known locally to me and personally to me. And as we sort of grew the business and we got exposed to, for instance, outside financing and to folks that were outside of Edmonton, it was an opportunity to meet folks that had accomplished incredible things and were willing to share. You know, it was just tapping into these networks. It's one of the reasons that, I mean, I'm a huge supporter of what you know, you folks are doing at TNT, creating a community and an ecosystem where you can network with folks and get access to folks who have experience. We didn't have that. We eventually got access to that, you know, to that type of, you know, mentorship and experience. I would have loved to have it sooner, earlier in our process. It would have made such a huge difference, you know, in terms of accelerating your learning at an early stage.
Right, right. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have a final piece of advice, words of wisdom? There's a lot of entrepreneurs in our community here today. Final thought that you want to leave people with? I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I know this. Look, if you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your company, sometimes it can feel so isolated, and at times you don't know where to look for support. And so expose yourself to organizations, whether it's, you know, TNT or Startup or Alberta Innovate or any of these programs. Just put yourself out there to, you know, to the network and the community. And it's amazing, you know, what you can learn and what you can draw from it. So yeah, don't do it all on your own.
Agreed. Brian, thank you very much for your time today. We know your time is sparse to give to stuff like this, but we really appreciate you sharing with us. Thank you very, very much. And everyone, thank you for being part of this conversation. I believe we are moving out of here and we're moving into the final pitch session now. So thank you for being part of this. I hope there was some awesome words of wisdom and some little notes that you took to dive a little deeper into next time or for later. We'll see you soon, which will be literally in a minute or two in the next Zoom link. Have a good one.
Thank you.